Hi everyone, my name is Alicia Salcido. Welcome to my Week 4 multimedia discussion for MPA 594, Public and Private. In this presentation, I'm going to be reviewing a public and private organization, the thesis, and the 3 themes for the public and private organization. For the purpose of the paper, for a public and a private organization, I'll be focusing on a school because they do have the same goal, which is to provide an education to children. First, for the public sector, we will be focusing at the Martin Luther King High School, and for the private sector, I'll be focusing on Woodcrest Christian High School. To answer Allison Graham's question, alike in all unimportant respects. So, for the purpose of this paper, public and private organizations that have the same goal to provide a service to society are similar but are different in other aspects, and the differences are important. 3 themes that I have identified to support my thesis would be to focus on the similarities, the differences, and then what is really important. For our first theme, we have similarities, and the similarities between a public and private organization in the school arena would first come down to Gulick. Gulick has already the stepping points of what managerial functions should look like. He has developed the POS Corp, and besides going into detail of POS Corp, it's more of where did his ideas build upon from. First, we can see that he did use Weber, bureaucracy. This is not like a standing point, but kind of a structure of what an organization should look like. And both private and public meet that criteria based on the 6 characteristics that Weber has. And Weber is doing this setup based on previous information, like for example, the Constitution, Article 4, states power. In order for public and private schools to function, they have to follow the mandated rules and regulations that are upon that. So they're still going through this bureaucratic process, this formal rules of what needs to be implemented. Taylor is also building upon what the manager should do for the organization. And this is where Gulick's getting like the planning, the staffing, because he's building upon Taylor, getting those ideas of like how the manager should instruct and formulate the workers in the organization to be efficient. Follett is also showing that same type of communication with the workers. There has to have that reciprocal communication for there not to be any conflict among the workers, so it could be very efficient and a organization to function. And then Allison is just agreeing that all of these build upon each other to show that, even though they're 2 separate entities, that is public and a private sector, they're both similar in these managerial functions. For our second theme, we have the differences, which is going to be including bureaucracy, efficiency, and funding. So for bureaucracy, Weber did structure out what a bureaucracy should look like, but Wilson is actually going to be saying something a little bit different about what a public administration should actually look like to be functional, to make sure that it's not chaotic. And one of those ways that it's going to be doing that is through the merits of hiring qualified candidates for those positions, to make sure that you're actually hiring someone who knows what they're doing. In comparison to a private organization, they could actually hire anyone they just feel or believe that they should be hired, or even because they know someone. Those merits don't stand against each other. And this is going to be referring back to the Pendleton Act, where public administrators have a law in place to ensure that we are hiring and having people who are qualified based on degrees, merits, years of experience. For efficiency, this is going to be a little bit different because as Taylor in his scientific management, it's reviewing how can you maximize production and use little funding and resources. For private organizations, that's also their main goal. They want to maximize production. They want to use as little resources as they can. They're trying to, build a profit for themselves. In comparison to public administrators for a school district, they don't have those same opportunities. And the reason for that's because they have a specific funding to use to work with. And for that, they just have to use what they have. They can't really try to maximize that production to be efficient, as Taylor would agree. And this also is going to be tying down to the funding aspects. Private organizations have different ways of generating revenue to sustain themselves, so they don't have to rely on the states to receive any federal funding in that aspect. So, they're not doing that cooperative federalism to meet any or to follow or to abide by any rules in order to receive certain type of funding. Grozin would agree more in the public aspect that public schools have to, in order for them to even function, they need to cooperate. They have to follow any guidelines that's given to them to receive any specific funding, or if the funding's just already in place, then they'll just receive that for the state. And then it's going to be tying down to the market failure. Is the private organization, are they offering enough service or good to society? Is it sustainable? Like, the government has to intervene because, there are people who can't even afford sometimes private schools. So the government itself is actually intervening to ensure that there is free schooling for children, especially because we want to make sure that all children are attending schools. For our last thing that we have, it is what is really important. And what is really important is that public and private organizations understand that there is differences. And these differences are able to show that public administrators are doing the best that they can because they are following guidelines, rules, theories, regulations in place to ensure that their job as a public servant is being done correctly, because we are here to serve a community that is in need, or just being there if the government is needed to fulfill that market need as well. Appleby would agree that private organizations don't have those same ideas, those same goals. Their goals are very different, which doesn't relate to them to being a public administrator. Lynn Bloom would also agree that policies that are also in place, it can't happen overnight. Those changes, it's going to take time, and in order for us to move forward with any implementations or regulations, we have to look at it timely and take that time to ensure if it's being done correctly, if this is what's really important for the society in itself, or the people that they're actually serving. So these differences is what is really important. In conclusion, we have our 3 themes. As Allison would agree, this is the same formula or format that is used in his article. We have our similarities, we have the differences, and we have what's really important. And what's really important is the differences to distinguish the difference between a public and private organization, even though they do have some similarities in that aspects. So thank you guys very much for listening. And if you guys have any comments or feedbacks, I would really appreciate it. I hope you guys have a great week.